Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial we will focus on a complete walkthrough of a Python dictionary data structure. So what is a Python dictionary? A Python dictionary is a data structure for storing groups of objects. It consists of a mapping of key-value pairs, where each key is associated with a value. It can contain data with the same or different data types. It is unordered and it is mutable. Let's see how we can create a Python dictionary. We begin with initializing an empty dictionary. Let's take a look at the results. So we see exactly what we expected. We initialize an empty dictionary and that's what we got returned. When we want to create a dictionary with some values that we want to populate, we add the values as a sequence of comma-separated key-value pairs. For example, let's say we want to create a dictionary with countries as keys and their populations as values. So let's create a new dictionary called countries. And we're gonna add a few sample data points. So first country would be China and its population. And next country would be India, also its population here. USA and the corresponding population. So you get the gist that everything that we're adding is basically a key, which is a string here, and then the population as the value. This part is just taking a little bit of time, and the reason why I'm adding several examples is because we're going to be actively using these later on in the parts of the tutorial where we're going to edit some information within the dictionary. Okay, so now that we have this dictionary, let's print it out to make sure that we have everything that we needed. Let's run the code, and here we go, exactly what we were expecting to see. In order to access values stored in a Python dictionary, we should use the key associated with the value. For example, let's say that we want to get the population of USA from the above countries dictionary. We know that the key of the population value is USA, and we use it to access the population value. So let's create a new variable and call it USA population. And then we are going to access the value using the key, which is USA. And let's take a look. Perfect. So we got exactly the value that we were looking for, and that is stored in the dictionary. Note that unlike a Python list, we're not able to use indices to retrieve values. What I mean is that if we know that USA is the third entry in the dictionary, we cannot say countries and then use number 2, which is the index of an entry, in the square brackets in order to retrieve it. The only way to retrieve the value is to pass in the corresponding key, and then we get access to the value that is stored in the Python dictionary. In this section, we continue working with the countries dictionary and discuss ways of adding elements to a Python dictionary. So let's begin with learning how to add a single element. Let's say we want to add another country with its population to the countries dictionary. For example, we want to add Japan's population of 126 million. So we can easily do it by adding it as an additional key value pair to the dictionary. So we use the new key, which is going to be Japan, and we're going to assign the corresponding value to it. And that will add another element into the countries dictionary. So let's take a look. And now we should have another element in it. Exactly. So this was the dictionary before any addition, and now we added another key value pair to it. Now, what if we want to add more than one country? Let's say when I want to add 2 more countries with their populations to our dictionary. For example, Russia and Mexico with populations of 146 million and 129 million respectively. Will the same syntax work? Well, not really. So we will need to use the update method of a Python dictionary data structure. What it allows to do is to add multiple comma-separated key value pairs to the dictionary. So the logic here would be to create a new dictionary, and let's call it new countries. Which will have Russia, Mexico, and their corresponding populations. And what we're going to do next is we're going to merge it into the countries dictionary using the update method. Okay, and now let's take a look. Perfect. Now you can see that we successfully added new elements to the dictionary. If you recall, first we added Japan, and right after that we added multiple elements, which are Russia and Mexico and their corresponding population values. In this section, we'll continue working with the countries dictionary and all the updates we've made so far, and discuss ways of removing elements from a Python dictionary. So let's begin with removing a single element. Let's say we need to make some changes and remove a key value pair for China and its population from a dictionary. We can easily remove it using the pop method. So we use pop, and then we pass the key for the key value pair which we want to remove. Okay, so let's run it and take a look. As you see, China was the first entry, and now we successfully removed it. Now, the next step is to explore how to remove multiple elements from a Python dictionary. So let's say we want to remove Japan and Mexico and their respective populations from the countries dictionary. So let's create a new section here. remove multiple elements. Okay. We know that pop method allows us to remove a single element per call, which gives us an idea that if we iterate over a list with keys that we want to remove, we can successfully call pop for each entry and drop it. So let's begin with creating a list of values. We're going to call it toRemove, and this is going to be a list with keys, in our case, the country names that we want to remove. So let's add Japan and Mexico to it. Now, what we want to do is we want to iterate over a list and call the pop method every time on each key. So for key in toRemove, and then similar syntax as in the previous section. Perfect. So let's run this code and see what we get. Okay, you will notice that we've successfully removed Japan and Mexico from the countries dictionary right here. Another functionality to cover is changing elements in a Python dictionary. You will see in the sections below that the functionality of changing elements is identical to functionality of adding elements. Why is that? It happens because when we try to add new elements to the dictionary, Python looks for that specific key we're trying to add, and if the key exists in the dictionary, it overrides the data. But if the key doesn't exist, it adds a new key value pair to the dictionary. So let's start with changing a single element. Let's say we want to update the value of Brazil's population to a different value. So if we go up when we were defining it, so let's say we have this value here and we want to change it to something else. So what we would do is we would find it by the key, which is Brazil, and we will assign a new value to it. Let's call this single element. Okay, let's take a look. And you can see that we've successfully updated the value of Brazil's population. Now let's say we want to update the values of Indonesia and Pakistan populations in the countries dictionary respectively. So let's first create a new section for this. The logic is to create a new dictionary, and let's call it update countries. With the key value pairs that we need. And now use the update method similarly to what we used when adding multiple elements. Okay, and let's take a look. So we can see that we have successfully updated the populations of Indonesia and Pakistan to the values that we had in our update countries dictionary. So everything worked out perfectly. In this section, we'll focus on different ways of iterating over a Python dictionary. So let's start with iterating over dictionary keys. So let's remove this part here, add a new section. let's say we want to iterate over the keys of the country's dictionary and print each key. In our case, it will be each country on a separate line. So we'll simply use a for loop together with the keys dictionary method. So for country in countries keys will print the country. Okay, let's take a look. Perfect. So after all the changes, these are the countries that we have in our countries dictionary, and we've successfully printed each key on a new line here. Now we can also iterate over dictionary values. The logic is very similar to iterating over dictionary keys. So as you can imagine, we'll also use a for loop, and now we'll use the values dictionary method. As an example, when we would like to do this is if we want to obtain the sum of all of these populations that we have in the dictionary. So let's say we create a new variable and call it sum populations, and we'll initialize it as a 0. Now what we want to do is we want to go through each population that we have stored in the dictionary population value and add it to the sum of populations. So for population in countries values, we will add each population to our sum populations variable. And in the end, let's see what we get as a sum. Let's run this code. And we see that the sum of populations is equal to this large number right here. Now, as a last step, we can also iterate over dictionary items. An item of a Python dictionary is its key value pair. And this allows us to do iteration over keys and values together. So first, let's create a new section for it. And now let's talk about a use case. So how can we use it? Let's say you want to find the country with the largest population from the country's dictionary. Iterating over each item of the dictionary allows us to keep track of both keys and values together. So let's start with a value that we will call max population. And let's define it as an infinity, like a negative infinity. And we'll have the max country. And this is just going to be an empty string. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each country and population in the dictionary. So for country, comma, population in countries dot items. Now, if the population that we're looking at is greater than max population, which is going to be the value. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to assign this population as max population, and we will have the corresponding country as the max country, or basically the country corresponding to the current maximum population. And let's take a look what we get in the end. Let's run the code. And what we get here is we get India and the corresponding population. And you can check that if you go through each population that we have in the dictionary and compare, you'll actually find that India has the largest population out of the countries that we have in the countries dictionary. In the last part of this tutorial, we will talk about nested dictionaries in Python. A nested dictionary is a dictionary that consists of other dictionaries, and which means that you can create nested dictionaries in a similar way of creating regular dictionaries. For example, let's say that we want to create a dictionary that will have information about each country's capital as well as its population. Let's create the countries info dictionary. Now we'll start with China, which is the first key. And then in the value, we are going to have a dictionary. And this dictionary is going to contain information on the capital and the population. So we'll start with capital, and then we know it's Beijing. And then we add another key value pair, which is going to be the population. So this becomes our first element. And now let's add one more. And the logic is very similar. So we have our key, which is India, and then we add its capital. Which is New Delhi. And then we'll add its population here. So you can see that this logic will continue going on, and we're going to keep adding this key value pairs where each value is basically a dictionary on its own. Now, using these sections that you've seen before in this tutorial, you can apply the same code in order to add new elements, access elements, change elements, remove elements, and iterate over dictionaries as well. So I will just add this last key value pair. So now you get the logic of how this works. Basically, now we have a nested dictionary where each key is the country name, similar to what we have in the countries dictionary. But then the value is a dictionary on its own because it consists of several comma-separated key value pairs. So for China, we'll have the capital, which is Beijing, and then we'll also add population. And then we do the same thing for every country. Notice that this type of structure can continue. So instead of having just Beijing here, this could be another dictionary, which will be the mapping of the city name and city province. And then the population here can also be a dictionary on its own, which is going to be, I don't know, maybe the country's population and the capital's population per se. But now you have an idea of how nested dictionaries work in Python as well. In this tutorial, we focused on an introductory walkthrough of Python dictionary and its methods, which are important to learn as they are used in many areas of programming and machine learning. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated about every video that I post. Feel free to leave comments below if you have any questions or have suggestions for some edits or ideas for any future video that you would like to see on the channel.